All right, we're live. This is Relatives Fight CPS. I'm attorney Vincent Davis. I'm joined by my co-host, Miss Georgette Truant, a previous victim of CPS. And tonight we have a very special guest, Darlene. Is it Abraham or Ibrahim?
Ibrahim.
Ibrahim. And just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm an attorney. I've been licensed to practice law in California almost 35 years in December. And my expertise is representing people in CPS cases. And I consult with and I rep people all over the country. And I also represent people in actual cases all over California. Georgette, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am the co-host for Relatives Fight CPS, and I actually, oh my God, I can't even find the words to say.
Okay, thank you, Georgette.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness. I advocate for parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, and actually, I'm very passionate about what I do, and I actually enjoy doing it because it's to be able to listen to your story, be able to interact with you, and do the best I can to help you.
Great, thank you. Darlene, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you for having me on the show. I think it's very important for my story to get out because of the challenges and the things that I've been going through. So I'm a grandmother. My daughter passed away 2 months ago, and I'm still dealing with that.
I'm sorry to hear that.
So she left behind 2 small children, and they were, I guess I can say they're in the system. So what that means is they were taken from my daughter, and she fought very hard to get them back. The day before she passed, we went to lunch, and she spoke on trying so hard to get the children back and the things that she did, and to comply to I believe what they required for her to get the children back. And she shared with me what a challenge it was for her, and how they were not working with her, and she was just really upset about it. And she shared with me that Mom, if something were to happen, and they tried to not give me the kids back, could you really help me get the children, take them in your custody? And so we spoke on that, and it was very touching to me because our last conversation was about the children, and it was kind of like if she was saying goodbye, because she even got down to the detail of, Mom, I don't like red roses. She talked about the color of flowers that she liked, and so it was very emotional conversation we had. And so the very next day, she was in a tragic car accident that took her life, and that's where everything began for me, coming in and okay, so let me kind of back up a little. So the children were with her father. He had the children, and there was allegations towards him that I believe that they were seeing the mom and the father, and so they got involved to the point where they were called. Well, they called me and asked me if I would take both of the children, and I said, yeah, of course. And but they didn't really get into detail about what was going on with Grandpa, but they took the children out within 2 weeks after my passing of my daughter. And so everything was going on with the family. We haven't even buried our daughter yet, Grandpa and me. So the children were in his care. So they took the children out of his care within the 2 weeks and brought them to my house. And so I've had them. And then that's where everything kind of started to, they came to my house and they were interviewing, and just everything was going on. And so the bottom line is they've given me a really hard time. I'm really trying to adopt the children. I want the children. I'm capable of taking care of them both, and they love grandma, and they want to be with me. They've stopped everything, all my support system. Like, I had a support system. I had cousins and aunts and relatives, and on the father's side, the grandparents on that side, and the relatives on that side, they just stopped everything. They denied everyone. They won't allow them to visit the children. Nobody could pick them up from school. No one can have them for the weekend. They just stopped everything. And so that was my support system, was my sister and brother. And I had to get a court order to get them approved. And so that's where it's at right now with that. But they've really given me a hard time, and they're trying to take the children. And it's just been horrible, and I'm still, mourning for my daughter and dealing with that. And I'm a fighter, I'm not going to give up. I was a product. I was a child that was in foster care myself. So no, I know what it is to be in foster care. I know what it is to wake up and be in a stranger's house. I know what it is to, try to get something to eat, and they lock the refrigerator, and you don't wash your hair properly. They're spanking you, and it was just horrible going through foster care. And I'm just not going to give up. I'm just going to continue, and I'm going to fight hard to keep my babies, And so my daughter didn't even pass in peace. She was crying for the last day for her children, and it's been really rough. But I'm not going to give up, and I'm just here to speak on that, because I think it's horrible that they're supposed to bring families together. This is something that it's going to take a village. All of us love the children. We all want to be there for the children. And they just keep stopping these things by false allegations. It just seems like they're trying to adopt these children out to strangers. And that's what it looks like, because I've never heard of them not allowing anyone to help me,
Right. Well, let me ask you something. How old are these children?
3 and 5.
Okay. And do they realize what happened with their mom?
Yes, they do. Well, the 5-year-old does now. The 3-year-old doesn't really understand, but knows that mommy's not here.
Have they told you that they're trying to take the kids away from you?
The worker, the last conversation we had, she said, "Can you start to look for friends, even friends of the family, and or even somebody that's willing to take both kids?" And I thought, well, why? I didn't understand why. And she said that it was none of my business. Anytime I would ask her about the father, she said it was none of my business. And
well, I can understand her saying that about the father, but my question is, why are they wanting to take the kids with you if the kids are at your home right now?
I don't know. I at first, well, they contacted me, so I assumed that everything was fine. And then they were questioning my grandson. They would go to his school every week. They were questioning him, and he told me, "Grandma, they keep asking me questions. They keep asking me questions." I go, "Like what?" And he said, they would just ask about the father and then about mommy, and it didn't make sense to me. So I called the worker and I asked her, "What was that about? Why are you going and questioning my grandson?" So, and she said it was something about an allegation that I'm allowing the fathers to see the kids or something like that. Or she didn't really give me the full reason why. It was just, and I didn't understand. I was like, okay, I didn't want to argue with her. I just kind of just said, okay, and I didn't realize that I was going to go through the things that I'm going through with them trying, them to remove them from the house. So we had a court date. We had a court date about a week ago. And so the judge kind of yelled at me and I didn't even know why it was saying, Grandma, we were going to take the kids out of your house because um, there's allegations that you're allowing the fathers to see the kids without even, I couldn't even defend myself. I didn't say anything because she was scolding me. And I was like, where did this come from? And so, and then, and then, and you're telling your grandson not to talk to the workers. And right now, what's going on is the kids have lost their mother. They were taken out of the grandfather's house. Within the time of everything going on, the trauma of losing their mom. And then grandpa, they were close to grandpa. And there's too much going on. And I just feel that, I don't know. I don't understand. But I know, like I said, I was a foster child. And I remember workers telling me things about my mother to lie about, or this, and I know that goes on. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, here we go. I don't know what's really going on about the things that they could be putting in my grandson's thoughts. I don't know. I just feel that I didn't have a fair chance to defending myself, or even, presenting it to the court that it's not happening. I would never violate any rule or whatever they wanted me to do to jeopardize me having the children. I would never do that, so I don't know. I'm just right now, I'm very frustrated.
If I may, remember when we spoke earlier today, you said that the social worker told you that when you were in foster care, that if you don't lie about your mom, you will never see her again.
Exactly. Yes.
And
yes.
that brought tears in your eyes. And
Yes.
I remember when I spoke to you, we talked for about an hour.
Yes.
And that's something that was in your mind and you cannot get over.
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, it's very traumatizing still. I'm 53 and I still remember these things as a small child going through this. And I remember the lies and the things that they wanted me to say against my mother, and I remember everything. And so that's what played through my head. I was like, wow, I didn't really think that it was going on still like that. I had no idea. I thought that, I'm grandma, I'm here to care for my children, and I love them. I want to adopt them. I want them in my care. And I didn't understand why they would do this. But I remembered going back, being in foster care, and I remember the social worker literally sitting me down and trying to tell me things that weren't true. And I just wasn't, I remember those things. And so, yeah.
Wait, Darlene, hold on a second. What you've told me about your experience, I believe you, but give me a specific example.
About what they told me?
Yeah.
They just about my mother, about her, the things that supposedly were going on in the house. And they weren't, just to lie about, just saying like, oh, your mother abused you, or, she neglected you in such a way so that way we can put you in a really nice home. And it was just like, I go, no, I want to be with my mother. And that's not what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I was the oldest out of 3, and that's not what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and they were just trying to like rehearse lies into my head, and it wasn't happening. I knew that it was a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just remember that, and I cried because I thought I would never see my mother again. And but yeah, and just stuff like that. And that, my mother didn't care, and she wasn't, and my mother cared. My mother was trying to see us. She tried, and they would just say that she didn't care. She left you here, and that's not what happened, because I found out the whole story later, through my grandmother. So, so yeah, there's just things like that. And I was young. I was like maybe 9. I remember at 9.
Did you ever get back to your mother's home?
Yes, I did.
How did that experience affect you with your mother, or did it just faded away?
No, we talked about it later when I was a young adult, and her struggles, and and the things. So my mother, she was an alcoholic. So, and that was the reason why we were separated from my mother. She was going to treatment and she was trying to get help. And we were with grandma. Grandma called social workers because she didn't want to take care of us while my mom was in rehab. And so that's how we ended up in the system. So, and my mother got clean and she tried to get us back and they just shut that down. And she fought really hard and she got us back.
So while you were a minor, you did get back to your mother's home.
Yes.
How was your experience in foster care?
It was horrible. I remember feeling so separated from everyone else because I know that, okay, so we were in one foster home with, it was Hispanic family, and because we were Hispanic kids, they put us with Hispanic family. And I remember they had older kids, 2 older boys, and I remember everything was separate from what was going on with them. And anytime we asked for like school clothes or school shoes, or we got to wait till your check comes, that's what they would tell us. And we were like, what's that? We don't know what that is at 7, 8 years old. And then when we would go, they would buy us 1 pair of shoes, 1 pair. I mean, it was like limited. And I remember my little sister and I, and we talked about it, me and my sister, not too long ago, how she was taking a shower and I could hear them beating her. And I ran in there and I said, what are you doing to my sister? And they're hitting her with a shampoo bottle because she didn't shampoo her hair right. And I grabbed my sister. I said, get your clothes, we're leaving. And I was like 8 years old. We packed our little bags and we ran out. We took off. I left. I said, we're going. And we didn't get far, but because we're little, but we didn't want to be there. And I remember we would be hungry and they would lock the refrigerator and they had a lock, a lock on the refrigerator. And then they had a separate refrigerator for them. It was just weird. It was just, we felt like foster kids, and we slept in a room. It was bare in there. There was nothing on the walls. Everything was just like, we lived out of a bag, we had, I remember holes in our underwear, holes in our socks, our shoes it was horrible. There was no love, there was no affection. There was nothing. There was no kind of, it wasn't, I don't know. Now that I think back, it was probably for the money. I don't know. I'm a substance abuse counselor. That's what I do for a living. And so I'm, just going through that myself and going through training and things, classes and schooling and seeing all the abuse I believe that I went through in foster care. I got more abused in foster care than anything. I mean, I remember those are very scarring feelings in me that I carry still. And that's really why I became a substance abuse counselor, because my mother was an alcoholic and I went and wanted to help others. But I don't forget what I went through as a child. And I wanted to help others, overcome those trauma, pretty much. I don't want my grandkids to experience that, and they don't need to. There's so many family members within the family that's willing to be supportive with these children and help. We all want to help, but they won't allow us to. They keep shutting doors, and they're not allowing anyone to be approved. I mean, I have to literally call the children's attorney to see if he can get a court order just to get my sister and my brother approved. So
Did he get the court order?
He did, and she jumped right on that quick, and she got them. They finally got approved like a week ago, and so now they're approved. But I had to get a court order for that, and so it's been one thing after another. One thing after another that I've had to deal with them, but I'm not going to give up. I'm gonna keep fighting, because I know what it is to be in foster care, and they don't need to be in foster care.
Darlene, I'm going to tell you something. Early on in my career, when I first started doing these types of cases, I used to represent foster parents, a lot of foster parents who had been accused of child abuse. So if you have a license to be a foster parent and there's an allegation of child abuse against you, and it makes it that far, the cases are prosecuted in a what I will call a secret court, as if CPS isn't a secret court, but a secret court downtown LA. It's the Office of Administrative Hearing, and they would bring the state of California, who issues you the foster license, would bring a case against you as a foster parent to either revoke your license, put you on probation, send you to remedial classes, that type of thing. And I can tell you that when those cases are brought, nobody knows about them. Nobody, for example, in Monterey Park knows anything about those cases. They're secret. So, when all over the state every day, judges feel compelled to send children to foster care. And what they don't know, or what they don't realize, I think, is that they may be sending this child into a worse situation than being at home where mom was an alcoholic. And I even represented a foster parent who had caused the death of a child. Now, I'm not sure why they took this kid away from the parents originally, and it wasn't part of the case. But the child ended up dead. I used to represent foster parents that were accused of all sorts of things. I mean, you'd be shocked. So when people tell me, oh, they can just go to foster care for 6 months, I don't think they actually realize what they're saying. One time, this happened several years ago with a judge who was kind of new to juvenile dependency cases and CPS cases. And my client, a mother, had one of her children in her custody, but the social worker didn't want to release the child back to the mother, the girl back to the mother. And unbeknownst to everyone, but the mother told me because she found out what was happening from her daughter, who was like 12 or 13, and she was Caucasian, she was white. And they had placed her, I don't know if it was a majority Latina or Latinx group home or African-American group home. But this kid was getting beat up like every day by the other kids. And she was having all of her stuff stolen. And this happened when, Sony Walkmans were real big, and it was a big thing if you had a Sony Walkman. Well, they had taken this from her. And we had a conference with all of the attorneys and the judge in the judge's chambers. And the judge, was very concerned because even she said, well, maybe the kid's better off with the mom, right? And she kind of looked at me because I was sitting there, with disgust written all over my face. She says, maybe I should be checking out these places where I send these kids. Because, implicit in that statement was, I think I'm putting kids in foster care or group home, and it's a great place. It's a safe place. I talk to so many former foster kids about being in foster care. They tell horrific stories.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you, Darlene, but I have stories of people that tell me how they were physically or sexually abused, and they don't want to talk about it. I was telling somebody on one of these shows, a couple of years ago, I was on a radio show Uh, and I won't mention the station, but it was a very popular network. And I was being interviewed by the host, who was a very popular, I guess, DJ at the time. It was kind of a talk radio show. And during during the break, she told me that she was a prior foster child. And then each break, she would tell me a little bit more. And finally, she tells me, and this foster home was out of state. It was another state back east. He tells me, "Oh yeah, I was basically, I was not basically, I was sexually abused for about 3 years in my foster home." And I'm like, "Hey, did you tell anybody? Do you want to like pursue it or anything?" And she said, "No, I try to put that out of my mind."
Yeah.
She
No,
said, but she said, it still affects me today.
yes.
She must have been, when she's telling me the story, she was late 20s, maybe 30. And all I could think about driving on the way home that night is, I wonder, or I bet this happens a lot, and we just don't hear about it. Now, people do call me and say, "Hey, my kid was abused in foster care," or "I was in foster care and I was abused." When I first went out on my own as a lawyer, I had a secretary who, I forgot how we met each other, but she was like my assistant, my secretary to me, and my partner. Um, and she knew that I did a lot of juvenile cases. One day she tells me, "I was a foster child." I was kind of surprised. She wasn't a minority. She was Caucasian, and wow, because most of the foster kids I knew, they're minorities. Anyway, she goes on to tell me this story about how she was in foster care, how she became the foster parents became her legal guardian. Back then, in these juvenile systems, adoption wasn't real big. There wasn't a financial incentive for adoption, so that didn't come to pass until uh, Clinton became president. But anyway, she told me this horrific story about how she was sexually abused, and that she was basically, they became her legal guardian, and that she was basically the housekeeper, the house cleaner, and the sexual object for the husband. Well, I convinced her to bring a lawsuit, and we did file a lawsuit. It settled out of court, but in discussing this with her, she never told anybody. And when she was telling me for the first time, she broke down, right?
Yes.
And she didn't want to bring the lawsuit. She didn't want to bring all of these old feelings up. One of the reasons why it settled is because she didn't want to have to go to testify. She was scared. Frankly, she was embarrassed. You know, how does some kid, young adult, young teenager, or teenager come to court and say in front of, you know, a bunch of people, "Yeah, I was sexually abused."
Yes.
I mean, how do you do that,
Yeah.
right? Since
Yeah.
then, I've represented a number of people that were abused, and part of the defense strategy is that child won't come forward and testify because they're too embarrassed to do it. I did a case a few years ago, and I'm at what's called a mandatory settlement conference, and that is a conference in state court where you have to show up and you have to talk to a judge about the case and try to settle the case before it goes to trial. And I'm sitting in in this judge's chambers with the attorney for the offending party, and the school district. I won't mention any names, but the judge says to us, he says, "Well, I guess there's no dispute that the sexual abuse took place on school grounds." And so he looks at the other side as if to say, now that's what I've been told. Is that true or correct? And everybody says, yeah, that's true. It happened. It happened 2, maybe 3 times, right? And the judge says to the defendants, well, what's your defense? And the defense attorney, without blinking an eye, says, now, this allegedly happened when my client, the child, was 8 years old. Years had gone by, so he's like 11 or 12 by this time. But anyway, he says, what's the defense? Judge, this is the settlement judge, and he's trying to figure out why they haven't settled with us. And the guy, without blinking an eye, says, oh, he wanted it. That's a direct quote. And the judge looked at him for about 5 seconds, then looked at me, and he says, Mr. Davis, would you excuse us, please? I have to talk to them alone. It seems they're not familiar with the law in California. We spent all day, the case ended up settling, but can you imagine? Here's a defense attorney saying his best defense. And I told the judge, he said, I don't know if this guy would have stood up and said this in front of a jury, but I told the judge, I hope he does stand up and say that, so that everybody in the jury is going to be as shocked as you are. Because I saw the judge's look on his face. The look was like, are you serious? I mean, you have to be kidding. But in these kinds of cases, they do some crazy stuff to try to minimize the amount of money that they're going to have to pay you one day. So, anyway, I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but these these placements in foster home, it's like, oh my God, if you only knew what I know, because I used to represent this group of people who are accused of abusing kids and their foster parents. And sometimes abuse is so subtle. It's not the sexual abuse, it's not the physical abuse. It's so subtle that people sometimes call it discipline. But here's the one thing that you mentioned, and it's hard to explain this to somebody that hasn't been in this situation. When you're in a foster home, a lot of times you're not welcomed in to the family. You're not integrated into that family. You're separate and apart. You're a second-class citizen. Imagine what that does to your psyche, your emotional, your development as a child, as a teenager. It's a bad situation, and I don't think we talk about that enough. I don't think it's considered enough by social workers, and if it's not considered by social workers, there's a good chance it's not going to be considered by judges. A judge contacted one of our shows and wants to be on the show. He's from another state, and he's pro placement of children with families and tries not to use foster care. There was a judge that just retired in Louisiana, a very famous juvenile judge, who said, I don't use foster care unless it's absolutely the last resort. I was explaining to someone, I don't know if it was on one of these shows or not, but in California, LA has what they call the LA model. And they're smart people, and they figured out how to monetize foster care, or how to make the most money from the federal government. 20 years ago, I went to a conference of CPS juvenile attorneys up in Northern California, and they were shocked that in a drug case or alcohol case, they would take the children away from the parents. They now have adopted the LA model, and everybody does it like that. But in the old days, they were shocked because they would work with the family. They would go there frequently. They would provide counselors at home. They would check on the children at school. Mom had to go to drug testing and test clean. But you can do all that with the kids living at home, right? You don't have to take them away.
But also, Vincent, not to interrupt you, but also they just a basic domestic violence, just verbal domestic violence. They actually take children just verbal domestic violence.
Oh yeah.
Verbal. Like means an argument over a dishwasher or argument over who did the laundry today. And then all of a sudden the neighbor calls the police and then they come and take the children without any investigation, mind you not. Just take the children and not place them with grandparents. They place them with foster home. And then I heard you saying several times on your shows that they need a court order to do that. And unfortunately, a lot of people I speak with, there is no court order. They just take the children and then they bring the police with them. And the police, I honestly don't know what their job is except to scare people. They actually tell cops they have to listen to them and they have to come with them while they take children from families. And anybody can make false allegations and the children are in foster home, which to me is, there's a word I want to say, but we're live. I can't say it, but there's no, it's like their souls are not connected with their bodies. It's like they have no souls. It's like they're bankrupt from themselves. There is no common sense. There is no family reunification. There is no such thing as you're a good parent. You just had an argument and the kids don't even have to be around for the argument. And they still take the children. They force children to lie. At school, I spoke to a couple of parents who the children are ages 12 and 14, and they told the children if they don't lie, that they're not going to see their parents. And one of the kids told the mom, and she said, "Mom, I didn't know what to do." And they wanted her to lie. That's why when I spoke to you today, it just brought back all the calls. I've been talking to people all day, and I hear different stories, and it doesn't make sense. So Vincent has this idea that we have to vote judges out. Fine, vote judges out. But who's to say we're not going to get a judge that's corrupt? Who's to say we're not going to get a judge that's not bankrupt from himself, or a social worker? The thing about it is nobody is actually taking a stand to doing the right thing. One judge out of millions of judges, it doesn't mean anything. One good judge out of a million of judges, and there is absolutely no justice. I get it. No justice in the court system. I get that part. But the kids are the ones suffering. So how is it for the benefit of the children when the kids are crying out to go home? They're crying out. If the parents are bad, why would the children want to go home? Why? Or why would the child want to be with the grandmother? Why? To me, it's because it's money machine. It's greed. So the children are suffering. So where are all the right people to stand together to actually do something about the system? Where are they? How can we get them? How can the parents be heard? How can the children be heard? Social workers, they have no souls, literally have no souls. And I honestly don't think they hire the social workers that actually care. I think they hire social workers that have narcissistic traits. Because one social worker, the father taped her telling his wife, "Why are you crying?" Because she's taken her 6-year-old son. She literally smiled at her face and said, "Why are you crying?" And I realized they're literally, I in my heart, I really believe they hire sociopathic, narcissistic social workers to do the job for them. That's what I believe. So I know, Vincent, you are doing everything in your power to make a change, to tell people, to educate people, and to tell them to vote judges out, so they're not reelected again, and to choose the right judges. But the whole system is so corrupt. I don't even know if there is a right judge anymore. to be
Well,
honest.
it's not just the judges, it's the entire system, the laws. The
Mm-hmm.
only way you can change laws is to get a legislative person, that sits in Sacramento to introduce new legislation to
Mm-hmm.
modify or add new laws to protect parents.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you have to do. You have to get a group of people together, you know, 1,000,000 votes, 5,000,000 votes, and elect people that are going to, you know, do things that are family friendly.
So let me ask you this, Vincent. Is there any way we can somehow do something where all social workers have to wear body cameras? They cannot speak to a child without body camera. They
Yeah,
cannot
yeah,
go to a home without a body camera.
yeah. There's something that you can do. You can force the legislature or even county government in Los Angeles or whatever county you live in to vote to require body cameras,
Got
just
it.
like they did for police,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Most police officers now have body cameras.
Now, can a social worker tell a parent, like a parent wants a social worker to record the conversation between him and his son, and the social worker said no, he denied it. Now, can that be requested from a judge for the social worker to record the conversation between the children and the social worker?
It can be, but generally by the time you get to see the judge, it's too late because you've already talked to the social worker, the emergency response worker. I did a case, it's been a couple of years now, where the social worker reported that the kid said something right at the beginning of the case.
Mm-hmm.
And that carried throughout the case until the parents were able to get the kids back like 18 months later. Couple years goes by, and I was in that town doing another case, and I had dinner, with the family. And the kid is now, maybe 12 years old, going on 13. And she tells me, case is closed already. She tells me, Mr. Davis, I've been reading over the papers, and what the social worker wrote in her report, it was true. I did say that, but I only said it because she promised me that I could go back home if I said that. And I've heard that before, and now Darlene's telling us the same thing, that happened to her when she was in foster care. Now that's a very interesting technique. Now, if you have on a body camera, you know, presumably you can't, that may not happen. I'm sure there's ways that you can get around it and all that kind of stuff, but it provides some type of protection. There was a bill, I talked about this before, that allowed you to tape record with your smartphone and videotape record a social worker without her permission, and to do it secretly. The law never passed. It never made it out of the committee. But imagine if you could tape and record social workers without their knowledge.
But the reason they don't want that to happen, Vincent, because there's nothing the social worker does that's actually legal. There is absolutely nothing social work, because if they do the right thing by law, they wouldn't mind being recorded. But when you tell a person you're recording them, they're not gonna they're not gonna lie. You understand? It's kind of like, but if you don't tell them, then the real person will come out.
Right.
And they don't want to be held responsible for demonic actions that they create daily. So that's why they do that. And I really feel that if children are involved, I really believe in my heart that body cameras are very important. Recording is very important. There's social workers that go to the home and they have ring cameras in the house, and she is demanding the parents to bring the ring camera down. I mean, to turn it off. And one of the parents asked her, like, why? Why would you want me to? You're in my home. And she
Right.
said, I don't want this to be recorded. He said, what do you have to hide? Right? What do you have to hide? She said, it's within my rights. And he told her, he said, it's within my rights to tell you that I'm going to record this because it's in my home. So she said, then we'll go outside. Then they went outside and there was camera outside as well. So she couldn't escape the situation. Then she said, I'm leaving, Mr. So-and-so. I will make an appointment to meet with you at Starbucks. So there you go. So why is it so important to the social worker? If she's doing the right thing, why would she mind her being recorded? So I guess that's another law that people need to vote for, or people need to come together. We need to do something. They have to be exposed. They're given too much power to lie in reports. There's reports where they copy and paste somebody else's information. There's another name in the report that has nothing to do with the actual parent. And the parent is like, wait a minute, this is not my name. This is not my phone number. So what's going on? And you know what? The judge doesn't care because the judge is keeping the parent quiet, right? They can't speak and they're on mute. If it's a Zoom call or a Zoom hearing, they're muted out. So there's a lot going on in the system that is so corrupt, so freaking corrupt that something has to be done. Something has to be done. It just is so ridiculous. I have no respect for judges. I have no respect for social workers. I have no respect for our government. Because seriously, if they care about the people, if they care about the children, then do the right thing. Do the right thing. It's so easy to do the right thing and not involve money in this. You can't even mention God in court. I have a pastor called me. They took his kids because atheist reported that he's forcing his 7 and 9-year-old to go to church. He's a pastor. The kids go to Sunday school and they love it. So the social worker went to his house, him and his wife, and took his kids. He's in Ohio. Took his kids because he mentioned that God. And the social worker said to him, well, where's your God now? He said those things to me. He cried for 35 minutes. A grown man cried for 35 minutes because they were attacking his religious belief. He's Christian. I'm Christian. I love my God. I believe in Christ. I can't even say I believe in Christ. I can't say that I love God. Are you kidding me? Now they're putting a hold on people's kids because somebody reported they're forcing the kids to go to church. Where is the logic? Where are the judges and all this? And then the social worker writes something different in the report. They say, oh, we took the children because we got a report that they were abused. But the children are not abused. There's no bodily harm on the child. They have food in the refrigerator. They have a bed to sleep in. Nothing. The children love their parents. So why are you taking the child again? So where are the judges in all this? The ones that are supposed to judge fairly, with common sense, with compassion, and not just take the words of a social worker saying this is what's going on. Where is the proof, you depleted souls? Where is your proof that the parent actually did that? Where is that proof? And the judges don't review cases. They don't look at anything. They just go along with what the social workers are saying. All this crap is going on for years and years and years. Nancy Schaefer, senator, she exposed them bullying doctors. Doctors give medication for bipolar to a 7-year-old. 7-year-old, medicated. And then they blame the parents for the child's action because the child wants to go home and she's rebelling or he's rebelling and wants to go home. Then they say, oh, you did this to your children. But they're not looking at themselves doing this to the children because you remove the child from a good home, put the child in somebody else's home. The child is reacting, but you're blaming the parent. How come the child didn't behave that way when they were with the parent? There's a lot going on, a lot is involved. And it's just it's talking about it every day, educating the public every day. But honestly, this is the time when enough is enough. Enough is enough, because we can't even mention God. If you mention God, you're crazy. The social worker said to one parent, if you mention God, that means you're crazy. So that's that's basically, it does something to a parent. It does something to your psyche. If you're sane, they literally turn you insane by the time the case is over. And then they expect parents not to cry. And then on top of that, they tell parents to go do drug testing and rehab classes when they don't have drugs in their system. Why would you want a parent to go to rehab when the parent doesn't have drugs in her system or his system? We got to do it to get your children back. Then the parent's like, okay, fine, I'll do it. We'll go do the classes, right? Then the social worker changes the story and tells the judge the parent is on drugs. It doesn't make sense. So judges are important in these cases as well, because to me, judges are either lazy, or they don't think correctly, or they don't review cases correctly, and they don't ask for proof and evidence. And they don't look at the fact that the reports are copy and pasted from somebody else's report, and the judge is looking, and the parent is trying to tell the judge, this is not me. This is not my name. This is not my phone number. And the judges tell the parents to shut up. They actually degrade them in the courthouse before anything is proven. So, yeah, we need to make a change. We need to make a difference.
Darlene,
Mm, mm.
did you have any questions specifically you wanted to ask me this evening that I might be able to answer for you?
Um,
Mm.
well, how can we appeal a denial of family members, because they're just shutting them down? How can we go about, like you said, uh, you were just saying that it's just one way. They're saying one thing, and they just go with that. They're not hearing what we have to say. They're shutting everyone else out. So I guess, how can we appeal the denial of a family member? Because there's family members that want to help, want to be there for the children, and they're shutting them out. They're not even calling them back. They keep calling and calling and calling, and they're not. So I guess that would be one of them.
Okay, well, let me answer that question. Okay, because it's a very important question.
Yeah.
And I find myself saying this a lot. On Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights, Thursday nights, on Saturday nights. Listen, social workers don't make decisions. They make recommendations. If they recommend something that you don't like or agree with, you have to take it to the judge. The judge is the final arbiter of what goes on in a child's life that's in his or her courtroom. So you have to get in front of the judge. And if the judge doesn't make the right decision that you want, you have the right to appeal it to a higher court. And then maybe to even higher court, the Supreme Court of California. But let's step back a second. So if I'm a relative, and the name of this show, Relatives Fight CPS, or a family friend, they call them nephrons. Basically, they're like relatives, but they're not blood or related by marriage. You have to file the following things in the courthouse. Don't rely on the social worker. Number one, you should file what's called a JV 285. You can Google that form. Number two, you should file a 388 petition requesting visitation and or placement of the child. Number three, you should file a de facto motion pursuant to a case called Charles S. Period. Okay, that says if you're a relative and you have an interest, maybe you should be given some type of standing in the court case. all right? You should file a petition to disclose the records so that you can know what they're saying about you.
Mm-hmm.
I have it's not so secret anymore, but I have a secret strategy. I have my clients make a list of 25 people, friends, relatives that I didn't say could take the children that live anywhere on the face of this earth. That could be in Los Angeles County for you. It could be in San Francisco County. Could be in Eureka. Could be in Las Vegas, Nevada. Could be in Miami, Florida. Could be in Jacksonville, Florida. Could be in Maine. Could be in Boston, Massachusetts. Could be in Puerto Rico. I did a case where the kid was placed in Puerto Rico. And a lot of people in that case didn't realize Puerto Rico was part of the United States.
How about Zimbabwe, Vincent?
If they're part of the Hague Convention, a federal international treaty, they can be placed there. Now, I can't tell you all of the countries that are part of the Hague, right? But I just did a case maybe a year and a half ago, about children being allowed to go to Switzerland. And although I haven't been on very many cases recently in the past, maybe 5 or 6 years, used to be involved in a lot of cases where kids would be placed in Mexico. Mexico has its own CPS. It's called DIF, D-I-F. I forget what it stands for. On Saturday night, we got a call from somebody in England, in the United Kingdom. They're part of the ICPC and part of the Hague Convention. So, you present this list to the judge and to the social worker. You present the list to the social worker via email. They can say no to one person, maybe two, but 25. And if you really want to get down and dirty about it, 50. How are they going to say no to 50 people?
They do, Vincent.
I believe that they do, but it's very difficult when you put it in front of the judge.
But
Because the judge will say, well, wait a minute, somebody on this list has got to be appropriate and fair. Now,
how come some of the judges don't say that though?
okay,
How most
I
of
don't
them
know how many.
don't say
I
that.
don't know how many judges you've been in front of with this issue, but I've been in front of hundreds on this very issue. And it's like one of those things that's the odds. Nothing is 100%. Nothing in life is 100%. Okay, but you got to play the odds. It's a 95 percenter. It's a 90 percenter. Okay, if you're looking for 100%, it doesn't exist. You can't even take a blood test to determine if you're the father and it come back 100%. It's scientifically impossible.
Mhm.
99.9, right? 70%, 80%. Nothing is 100%. So I'm giving you the high level play. And when you're involved in situations like this, you got to play the high level play. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just the judge. You might give the judge 100 names, and he might say or she might say no to all 100. They're gonna look pretty bad when you appeal that to a higher court. Like, nobody out of 100 people. That's almost statistically impossible. So those are the things that you can do. I hope you wrote them down. If not, watch the replay of this on one of these social media sites we're broadcasting to. Okay, each of those relatives should do what I just said. Now, can you imagine if 25 people filed a de facto motion and 25 people filed a 388 motion and 25 people filed, petition to disclose? You know what the judge is going to think? Well, wait a minute, there's a lot of people out there. Maybe
Mhm.
we should be considering people, within the family. And by the way, Darlene, I want to tell you this. The kids being taken away from you is not a dead issue. There are several things that you can do to
Mhm.
keep the kids with you. Now, I saw some of the comments tonight, and a lot of the people are saying, keep fighting, don't give up.
Mhm.
And you know what? That's what I say. You have to make them prove that they should keep these kids.
Mhm.
And just because the judge made a comment about something doesn't mean that he or she is going to stick with that decision. I've seen judges change their minds to their credit. I've seen it. They look at the evidence and they say, "Oh my God, I didn't realize that." I even once did a case. I did a trial, and I could tell that nobody in the courtroom wanted me to do this trial. It was a foregone loser. And I felt, I told the judge, my client wants their day in court. Do you know I won that trial? And I proved that the social worker was lying about a very important fact. And going into the case, starting the trial, I didn't know that I could prove that. It's just by way of testimony and little pieces of things people told me here and there. So don't give up. Put your fight forward. But as a backup plan, have 25 or 50 backup plans. It would be a shame if these people, if these children are taken from you when apparently you haven't done anything wrong because you still got the kids, right? If you were in such a danger, you wouldn't have the kids. So that just tells me the evidence they have that you've violated some court order
Mhm.
must be pretty weak. Because if they were sure about it, they would have taken those kids like that.
Mhm.
So do not give up the fight. And those things that I just mentioned that the relatives should file, you should file too. You should talk to an attorney because part of this is going to end up in court at some type of hearing or mini trial. Okay. And although you may or may not be able to do all of this legal paperwork correctly, um, you know, you want to make sure that you have the opportunity to be well represented in order to keep these children. Darlene, hold on a second, all right? I have to answer a super chat from Joel C. Joel C., thank you for the super chat, my friend. And it says, you need to understand CPS operates under the jurisdiction of the family court, civil, meaning a judge isn't obligated to uphold constitutional rights. Joel C., I appreciate the super chat, but I have to disagree with you. All right. Juvenile dependency court is in the civil division. It's not the family law court. Family law court deals with child custody and visitation in divorce type situations or paternity type situations. All right. Darlene is not involved in a family law court case. She's involved in a juvenile dependency case. Family law code controls family law court. Welfare and Institutions Code in California controls the welfare and institutions, controls CPS courts. Now, the second statement that I disagree with you, my friend, is judges have to uphold the Constitution. Now, the Constitution is a living, breathing document. That's what they've been saying to me all throughout my career as a lawyer, through law school. It means different things to different people at different times, under different situations. So it's flexible, right? You think it is just a set of rules. It's not. But judges are obligated to uphold. I even think uphold the Constitution. I believe even think it's part of their oath as a judge. So Joel, let's not give up on the system. Let's believe that it works, and let's keep trying. I know Georgette has some very
Wow.
strong views.
I just can't believe you said that. Okay.
Georgette has a very strong views. She's had
Woo!
very bad experiences
Wow.
in our legal system. Um, and listen, I understand Georgette's position. I mean, I do. I hear it from a lot of people all the time. But I do know that there are possibilities that justice can peek through even the darkest of storms. Okay? Listen, we're over time right now, and we have to go. We have to sign off. Okay, let me unmute Georgette. Yes, Georgette. I'm trying to unmute you. I can't.
Okay, somebody asked me to ask you this question.
Okay.
CPS knows that he has not been clean for 3 to 6 months, but wants him to do a hair follicle. What should he do? He wants to know.
What state is he in?
He didn't specify.
Okay, that's important because in some states, from my understanding, that hair follicles are legal. But in California, they're unconstitutional. But here's the big but. If the judge orders you to hair follicle test and you and your attorney don't object to it, you got to do it. So that's the answer to that question. Darlene, do you have any other questions for me tonight? Hold on, I got to unmute you. I'm sorry, you weren't. I had you on mute. Did you have any other questions, Darlene?
Let's see. Well, no, I think right now that's important. That it's really getting everyone that's trying to come forward to. I mean, that has tried to get approved. That's really that's what we're dealing with right now.
And don't forget, you don't necessarily want to go through the social worker.
Yeah.
You want to go through the judge.
Yeah. Well, I know, and it's hard to get there. See, that's the thing, because they have to let you in. When you're calling in. But I was able to get in.
You have to file. You have to file your paperwork. If you file your motions and your petitions, they got to let you in.
Okay.
At least to tell you we deny all of your petitions and motions. They got to let you do that. But then you can appeal it to a higher court.
Okay. Yeah, because there was times my daughter tried to log in and I was right there and they wouldn't let her in. She was trying to speak in the she wanted to talk to the judge and they wouldn't let her in.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems with that video appearance sometimes, and I've heard a lot of people complaining about it. Right. Hey, but I want to tell you something that happened recently. A person wanted us to file all those motions for them to get a child out of foster care, and we did.
Mm-hmm.
And then something happened. That person decided to meet with the social worker against my advice, and the social worker talked her into dropping everything.
Wow.
Based upon a statement that was incorrect. Based on a statement that was incorrect. So once you file this stuff, you've got to be careful. Let the judge decide, not the social worker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you have any further questions for us, give us a call at the office, 888-888-6582. Georgette can set up a phone appointment for me and you to talk, or for me to talk to any of those relatives that might need some assistance. Okay. Darlene, I want to thank you again for coming on the show and sharing your experiences. I hope I can call you in the future. We're starting a new show. It's going to be on Friday evenings, I believe. And our guest host is going to be, I forget his name. I'm embarrassed now. A therapist who works with CPS cases. Anyway, the name of the show is going to be The Real Victims of CPS, being children.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be talking to past foster children who are now adults, or children with their parents' permission where the case is closed. I can't talk to any current foster children, right? That'd be illegal. But we're going to hear from people, because there's so many past foster children, that had different experiences. I've talked to some foster children that said they had an okay experience, right? Wasn't great, wasn't bad. But then I've talked to the other side as well, where there have been a lot of foster children have told me some horrific stories, that we don't necessarily talk about or acknowledge inside the CPS courtroom. So Anyway, again, thank you, Darlene. I hope we can call you in the future. Georgette, thank you as always. You are you have a very strong voice and opinion, and I appreciate it, and I do respect it.
Thank you.
I'm Vincent Davis. We're going to see you guys hopefully tomorrow night on what's tomorrow night's show with Amanda Cisco, Fight CPS, the Civil Rights Struggle. So if you're ever thinking about suing a social worker, you might want to tune in tomorrow night, same time, same place, same station, and we'll be talking about that. And of course, on Saturdays on KABC 790 AM radio, talk radio, we do our 3-hour show where we talk to people all over the country. And now it's becoming, and even in foreign countries, about CPS stories and problems and where they ask their questions, and I try to answer them. All right, so everyone, thank you for watching and good night, and we'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Good night.